Hello fellow cyborgs and welcome to another Hindsight is 2020 video where I talk to you about the books that I've recently reread, or in this case, the comics. I first read Nimona upon a friend's recommendation. She thrust it into my hands and I purchased it upon her recommendation, and I first rated it 4 out of 5 stars. I did not have high hopes that upon rereading it would remain at the 4-star level, however, it did. I don't think that I thought this was as funny as I had previously when I was first reading it, but I did appreciate the character depth and also just the emotional sincerity of this. It seems on the outset that it's just going to be a little frivolous. It is funny and it is also parodying certain tropes, but the friendship that blossoms between Nimona and Lord Ballister is truly lovely. So Nimona is still a 4 out of 5 star read for me. Attack of the Deranged Mutant Killer Monster Snow Goons by Bill Watterson is one of the Calvin and Hobbes compilations I have on my shelves. This was my first exposure to Calvin and Hobbes. I didn't grow up reading it in the newspapers. I don't even know if they were still being published when I was alive. I have no idea. I originally rated this 4 out of 5 stars, and I was actually expecting to rate this 5 out of 5 stars upon rereading. I have since developed a huge fondness for Calvin and Hobbes both. At the beginning of the reread, I found I wasn't laughing all that much or even giggling to myself or grinning, so I was a little worried for a while, but my enjoyment increased when we actually got to the Snow Goons. I think that the hijinks that Calvin and Hobbes get up to in winter especially hit my funny bone. So at the end of this rereading experience, I still gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. When I originally read Pretty Deadly Volume 1, I loved it. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars and had intentions of picking up Volume 2 whenever it came out immediately. However, that didn't actually happen. It took me years to finally pick up Volume 2 and read it. In preparation for that though, I did reread this one, which is why we're in this video, and I did not love this upon rereading. I didn't like the unnecessary sex scene in here. I found a lot of the scenes to be visually confusing, especially action sequences, and there were many emotional beats in here that seemed like they were trying to come off as epic, but since we had only just met these characters, I wasn't fully invested with them, and so I didn't feel that epicness that the characters were trying to emote on the page. I still really enjoy the mythology, but after a while it felt like we need to introduce this new cool person, and now we're going to introduce this new cool person, and now this new cool person. So I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars upon rereading, not the original 5. However, Volume 2 of Pretty Deadly, which you'll have seen me talk about in one of my wrap-ups previously, I rated that 4 out of 5 stars. So if Volume 3 ever exists, I will be picking it up and hoping that it just keeps getting better and better. The Arrival is a silent graphic novel about the immigrant experience in this fantasy world. The illustrations are incredibly detailed and realistic and oh so beautiful, all in black and white. I absolutely loved this when I read it the first time. I borrowed it from the library. I then bought myself a copy and never reread it, but I have now, and it is still wonderful. It's magical and heartfelt, and I'm amazed at how much storytelling can happen with literally no words. This is definitely one of my most beloved bookish possessions. This is just such a beautiful story, and I highly recommend it. Still 5 out of 5 stars. Thunder and Lightning, whether past, present, and future, is a beast of a graphic nonfiction. I reread this not only because I wanted to, but also because of Natalie from Curious Readers' Curious Adventure Nonfiction Challenge this year. One of the prompts is to read a graphic nonfiction. When I first read this, I didn't know what to expect, but I had read Radioactive by the author. But when I first read this, I was surprised and just adored it. I even bought my dad a copy. I loved this just as much upon rereading. This is split into different sections based on different kinds of weather or weather-like phenomenon. It even talks about things like fire. And while I did feel a little sad that it seemed that some of the information was outdated, specifically related to the wildfire situation in Australia, which has since been horrendous and even worse, I don't think it's out of date yet, but it just made me realize that one day this will no longer be relevant or as relevant as it is now. The illustration style is strange but incredibly beautiful, and the vignettes also cover different people's stories that somehow have to deal with the different elements that are being talked about. It's just a masterpiece. It is so great. Even if you're not all that into weather, I'm not a big weather lover, this is just an absolutely fantastic book. Still 5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. So out of my rereading experiences so far, the comics have come out at the same star readings for the most part. That's definitely not what's been happening with my other rereads. I'm especially pleased that I finally got to reread some of these things that I had borrowed from the library, but then bought a copy to specifically reread and then never did for years. So now it kind of finally feels like those purchases are justified. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, continue to be lovely.